Okay, thank you very much. We're going to have this round table, to try to enrich everything that we have gotten these last 2 days. I think has been very enriching. There are a lot of issues that we can adopt, and we're going to try to follow a rather relaxed interaction on this table. So basically what we're going to have is we're going to talk 2 or 3 minutes, every one of us, about who we are and what we do on our institutions, and what we think that this kind of technology or this kind of new techniques that are being developed, where they are having impact, or where they might have an impact on the institutions that we work for. So I will follow just a regular left to right sequence, and just for the first section, just from 2 to 3 minutes, and then we follow on specific questions.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sergio Macías. Hi. My name is Sergio Macías. I'm working at the area where we are driving a survey about environment and household. And this survey capture information about consumption of water, energy, and the behavior of the population about the of the environment, and perception too. The biggest problem in this survey, rate of errors, and we are trying to capture the best techniques or suggestions in order to try to improve, in order to higher the quality about the information. Yeah.
You. Again, my name is Yang. So I've been serving as a research chief for the Decennial Directorate of the Census Bureau for the past few years. So my primary role has been actually integrate and I think put together a lot of different pre-tests that we have done together in preparation for 2020 census. There have been quite a number of the new innovations that we try to implement. For example, the using the web, based data collection as a primary mode of data collection. Second, using the administrative data to improve our data collection process and reduce the cost. Third, we also try to innovate actual field data collection process. So with less staff and then more IT support, and how best we can actually improve the actual data collection process in the field. Those are some of the innovations that I think I'm trying to integrate. So this is not just one person's work. We have hundreds of research staff working together for different aspects of all these innovations. But my job has been trying to integrate all of them in a very coherent manner. So we have a lot of this, cost and then benefits that we got to factor into, and eventually we got to come up with pretty good cost and benefit analysis, and then also cost and then other trade-off analysis, and make sure that we do implement all these new ways of innovating 2020 census data collection in a very, I think the cost-effective manner. And so we can meet all these legal requirements, I think as expected by the Congress and then by the Constitution. The other, I think the half of my work is also for the continuous improvement of the American Community Survey. This is a sort of gold standard of the sample survey in the United States. And this, the surveys is actually the sort of the data baseline for actually allocating almost $800 billion of the government fund at the federal, state, and then local government. So, all these decision makers and then program implementers can use ACS data, to support their public policy and so on. So between those two, there are a lot going on, but that's kind of primary job. But I think my primary concern is actually more to do with how best we can use all this information, whether this is from the census data, American Community Survey, or other sources of data that I think I have access to, whether these are coming from the academia, industry, so I can help inform evidence-based policy-making process. That is the ultimate sort of goal that I'm really caring about. So I'll stop here.
I'm Andy Peytchev. I'm a senior survey methodologist at RTI, which is one of the major survey organizations in the States. About 5 of them doing much of the contract work for government surveys. And I have mixed roles. So on one survey, for example, I may be the sampling and weighting statistician. On another survey, I'll be leading the experimental designs. And yet on the others, at the proposal stage, I may be involved in the design, in the study design. So it keeps it interesting, but it's also kind of relevant for adaptive survey designs. Seen from the presentations today and yesterday, it's really involving statistical and survey expertise during data collection. It's not just in the planning phases. So that has been interesting. I want to just make a comment, and also, I guess, my role as well on those. I think for both responsive and adaptive survey designs, there are at least 3 components that need to happen for it to be properly implemented in an organization. One is education, right? You need staff that understand what these designs are and understand how to implement it. So we've been fortunate that as an organization, we've had leaders in the organization that had stood behind it. And I was even instructed to teach a 2-day course of both survey methodologists and statisticians a few years ago. The main objective for this would be getting these designs, both in the design stages, but also in the implementation, to have people understand these designs. The second one is research. And what you've seen in some of the presentations from both Barry and from Gabby, you saw experimental results, right? Tests. And those need to happen. Much of that may be grant funded, as in from research grants. Some of it happens on surveys, ongoing surveys, where we can manipulate things during data collection, still mindful about the survey estimates. And the third part, which is just as important, is to develop systems that can deploy these more complex designs. So those may involve case management systems and improvement to the case management systems that would allow you to switch modes, or that would allow you to manipulate at the case level, right, instead of the entire survey. You could think of stopping rules that would be applied again. You want to stop a handful of cases, you don't want to stop the entire set of the sample. And also have the statistical staff that would also be in the implementation stage. So I guess this is less about me, and I think you're probably more interested in what happens at these organizations rather than what an individual is working on. But my role has been to support 3 of these areas are necessary for adaptive survey designs.
My name is Eduardo Jallath. I'm the Chief Advisor for the President of the National Institute of Statistics. As a additional role of supporting the activities of the president, my staff is actually leading the activities around what we call the quality the quality compliance of the information at INEGI. So since 2015, INEGI established a working group headed by the president and all the CXOs. And then from that group, we developed a lot of initiatives to improve the quality of the products that we generate. The framework for compliance are the United Nations Quality Assurance Framework, and the recommendation, the best practices for statistics from the OECD. So basically what we have done, we have tried to standardize the production of information with a focus on the specific, what we call evidence or paradata that need to be produced on the production lines. So we are adopting an international reference for producing statistical information that is called the Generic Statistical Business Process Model, developed by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. And from this framework, we are actually defining what are the specific roles, the responsible people for generating the data, and then the evidence that will be the paradata of every production line that we have. The bad thing about this project is that we didn't know about all the requirements that we need to actually deploy adaptive surveys. So we finished this definition of paradata like 6 months ago. And after this conference, we need to go back to the working room and start redefining again. But I mean, it will be nice because I mean it's just what we need to do to improve everything we can, so that the information that INEGI produces is of the highest quality as possible. Okay, that will be it.
Well, my name is Pineda. I am working at INEGI as Director of Special Surveys. Special surveys means everything that is not regular. New surveys or surveys with few iterations, and normally the resources come from external institutions. My responsibilities are to collect the information and be careful with the budget of the surveys. That's my main activities in the surveys. So I'm considered as a survey management is my activity.
Thank you very much. My name is Carlos Erwin Rodríguez. I am researcher here at IMAS UNAM, and I do mostly Bayesian statistics. I work with mixture models, MCMC methods, and all of that. But for some reason, in 2015, I received an invitation to participate as a member of the committee of the Quick Count that organizes the National Institute for Elections. The objective there was to estimate the configuration of the deputy chamber. And well, this estimation was really difficult because 300 deputies are elected by direct voting in 300 federal districts in which we can divide the country, and 200 are selected by some strange rules. You cannot get a specific formula for that. So what you do is resampling methods. But the thing is, for some reason they trust in us, and they invited me as well in for the election of governor in Colima, and then for the election of governor in Estado de Mexico, and then for this last election in 2018. And what I see right now is that we have been doing adaptive surveys, because we design a sampling design, but we start to receive the information in waves. So we have to adapt dynamically our sampling design depending of the information that we are gathering. So we have these graphics that Paul mentioned. We are monitoring in real time the non-response rate, the spread of the information that we receive, our estimates. We have a huge systems for monitor all these things. So for me, it's very interesting that all these things that we have to sort out, to solve, all that match in this framework. So for me, it's really illuminating to be here. So we can now know what we are doing. We are doing this adaptive survey design.
Hi, my name is Emilio López, and I am co-founder of a private statistical firm called Numerica. And we face a lot of adaptive situations, responsive in need situations. And I would like to talk about what makes me interested is the importance of this role of survey manager from a private perspective. And I think also there is another role which is important in order to avoid getting into these adaptive or responsive situations, maybe the survey seller. And we've been facing some difficulties in private studies because sometimes the expectations of the client do not meet the things that are feasible or that are doable. And sometimes from the design we have to adapt all these standard techniques, and maybe it is not only the survey manager but the survey seller, and sometimes it is the same person, which happens in small companies, but sometimes in big companies there is the survey seller and then the survey statisticians which has to solve from the design all these difficulties, and they have to meet the needs from the client. And also I would like to stress out the point of being overly creative with adaptive designs, because at some stage you have to compute the variance. You have to have some variance estimation of these estimates. And maybe, as Paul Wimmer said, maybe it is not necessary to do an intervention. Maybe it is better to reduce the objectives of the survey, and also you ultimately have to provide variance estimates. And if you complicate the sampling design, you will get into another problem. You have to pay the bill later. And well, that's some of the comments I have.
Okay, thank you very much. I think everyone in this table is doing something interesting. I will go for a second round. I will post a question, and then probably on the next round, if someone feels like he wants to make a question, will be fine. And this question it's something that I like to do when I work with my users, and it's let them think without restrictions. We always think with these restrictions that we don't have enough budget, we don't have enough staff, the staff doesn't have the training and things like that. But I would like the members of this table to think a little bit wildly and tell me what would they think about the way his enterprise of the clients that they work for would be the perfect environment? And I mean, like for people at INEGI, what will be the perfect framework to know in terms of flexibility? I mean, what will be what will be the perfect profile of your client to ask you for specific surveys? What will be the perfect profile of our deputy chamber to actually perform the way they should? So I mean, this can be very flexible. We can think of a lot of things, but I want you just to think in terms of an environment with not so many restrictions. Then we'll probably think about the restrictions, how to figure them out. But this round, we'd like you to talk about how will be your company with no restrictions, and what will be the perfect staff, the perfect management, the perfect organizations to actually adopt this kind of technology.
Omnibus survey. We depends on another survey. I think the particular independent or proper budget, trainer concept is that we need form frames, conceptualization, try to explain, try to, I think it is one of the characteristic. I think that it could be needed about the survey of environment.
I'll skip this time, so I'll come back.
I kind of said it in my opening statement that I think there are different areas, right? So there's education, there's research that needs to be done, there's systems that need to be deployed. I mean, you're talking about tracking estimates. Well, as Paul presented, there are dashboards that need to be created. And inordinate amount of time thinking through exactly what do you need your data collection folks to be tracking on an ongoing basis. So I think some of these, there become restrictions, because if you make the task too big, it becomes very difficult. If I had to rank order these, I'd probably say the education of the people working on the surveys is probably the most critical one. You can't have neither a responsive nor an adaptive survey design if you don't have people thinking in the same way, thinking about coming up with a design. It's not the same as saying, let's pick a design in which we start with a mail survey, we'll increase the incentive, and you know what, last time it worked well on the previous survey. No, these are the kinds of designs that you need to be thinking exactly for this particular set of objectives. How do you need to design your study? Which again then falls back on you need the minds of putting these together. So I think that there have been some concerted efforts, at least in the US, on this front. So the Baden framework was one example. That was an international example of trying to put Bayesian statistics in an adaptive survey design setting. I've been fortunate to be part of that. But James Wagner and Brady West, for example, have a grant to have summer courses on responsive design and responsive and adaptive survey designs. And so that helps because we see the people from the data collection organizations that take those courses and then take that back to their organizations and can implement those. And so we've already done this 2 summers in a row, and hopefully we're actually expanding it. So every summer it becomes more and more and longer with more instructors. So I'll stop here in the interest of time for the rest, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my first approach to the perfect world would be to have like probably half of this room working for INEGI, especially the people at the table. What we actually think is that we need a lot of education, and we need education not only for the people actually working on the surveys. I think I mean, with all respect, we need a lot of education for the people that is making the decision, like the top management in our institutions, and then all the way down. I mean, it is nice to have these workshops, but we need to actually make things to happen. And then obviously we need infrastructure. We need, as Andy was mentioning, the dashboards are something that we need, but we need this IT infrastructure that will actually keep track of all the activities that we are performing, keep track of all the events that are taking place on the survey, so we can actually have the raw material to start getting more studies and get more insight of what's actually happening on the field. So so basically my main approach will be to have this infrastructure, this full infrastructure in terms of processes, training, software, and that can generate all the paradata that we can work with to then get to the second step, that will be to analyze and then design these adaptive surveys.
Well, I'm going to answer this question, taking in mind the things that I can do for the surveys. My ideal, I would like to do cheaper surveys with the same or more quality that we are done. Means why cheaper? Because we can reduce the cost. We can do more with the same money. For example, last year we got to double the size of one of our surveys, and this size of the sample gave us the opportunity to disaggregate the data to a regional level. So that's wonderful for this survey. And talking about quality, this means that we are doing our activities in the right way. So from my point of view, I would like to make cheaper surveys with the same, at least with the same quality.
Can I pick it up? Yeah.
Oh, well, you have there.
I'd like to interrupt occasionally, rather than going from left to the right or the right to the left. And that is how the innovation is happening in real world. So actually, I think the Andy made a very good point about this cost issue. So let me just rephrase it. So perhaps the couple of questions that we always have in mind is that, given the limited budget, what is the precision of the estimates that we can achieve? That is the one way of the framing the question that we have. Another time we may have this, I think the other way around. Given this precision of the estimates that we expected to achieve, how much, I think it can do we need to achieve that, I think the goal. And there may be the other occasions that you have a different kind of the constraints when it comes to cost or data quality that you really like to go after. I think I like to say actually more about this cost-related issues. I mentioned it briefly in my the keynote speech on the first day, but I've been waiting for this roundtable so I can delve into some other details. I think we have actually heard a lot about this quality dimensions, quality indicators, and as Paul mentioned, quite a few indicators, and Barry also offered, some of those data quality indicators when it comes to representativeness, all indicators, and all this, coefficient of variation. And there are some other examples that also the Gabby discussed this morning. But when it comes to the actual cost data and cost metrics and cost modeling, I think this is one area that we still need to do a lot of work. This is very true, like I mentioned briefly, even at the Census Bureau back in the States. We still are struggling, how to, at least get all this, bottom-up cost data. This is not an easy work. Perhaps this may be something the Andy may, the other Andy, here, need to pay attention to almost, the everyday. What is the cost data that we have, and what is the budget, and then to what extent can we use it to come up with this really good project outcomes or these statistical estimates that we need to work with. So my suggestion here is that we gotta do some basic homework here. Keep the cost data every day, and then there's a sort of cost life cycle that we gotta think about, just like the survey life cycle. What is this the cost that we initially thought about, and then how it is changing during the middle of data collection, and then how it is impacting by the end of the data collection, and what is this cost and then budget that we have to think about, in the post data collection adjustment period. So there's a sort of this cost life cycle that we have to be mindful, and we can do some kind of real-time cost monitoring. And I think Paul showed perhaps some of those data, mostly for the data quality monitoring, but I think the RTI is doing some interesting work on also monitoring some of those cost dimensions. At the Census Bureau, we try to make that happen, but it's not happening as we wish. We really try to make it real-time cost monitoring over the entire survey life cycle or the census life cycle. And we didn't get there yet. And we need your help. I think you may have, perhaps some better cost data we can learn from your practice. And so I think that is a sort of very, very basic homework. And then when it comes to actual, I think use of those cost data, there are many different ways that you could do it. Cost modeling, and then cost metrics, and then cost, and then data quality trade-off analysis. But unless you have this very, very basic ingredient of the cost data, you cannot do much when it comes to cost and then data quality, the modeling and then trade-off analysis. Paul, I think, gave us pretty good synopsis of what this total survey error is about. Do we have total cost, the model, I think the framework that we can sort of conceptualize and then we can use it along with total survey error? I don't think we have that kind of model yet. Perhaps the INEGI can come up with your own model of the the cost framework from the over the entire survey life cycle, and that may be something kind of the work that we could do together down the road, and we can learn from each other. So I'll stop here, but that's the kind of I think my way of interpreting I think your comments and then the lessons that I like to to share between the Census Bureau and INEGI and then perhaps the other institutions that are concerned about these cost issues.
Well, so far, I think that we are not concerned about costs at the quick count. What we are concerned is about the precision, because the referee of the elections is coordinating the quick count, so they are very concerned about the precision. The precision is actually, the margin of error is about 0.5%. So they are not going to risk it. It's the referee that is organizing this exercise, so they are not going to risk it. But recently, we were having some restrictions in terms of the people that is gathering the information, the electoral assistants, they call it. They are there just, the main purpose of their work is to help the citizens in every problem that they have at the voting ballots. So we cannot overcharge them. So our restriction is maybe we cannot ask for a huge sample to have this precision, but we need a sample big enough to have a very good precision, but letting these guys work to help the citizens and everything. So that's our main challenge today. So it's like that's our restriction, not about cost, but just about human resources.
Well, sorry to oversimplify it, but from a private perspective, cost is not maybe it is maybe not a problem as long as it matches with the objectives. I mean, that's usually the problem. They want a Ferrari, but they want to pay a small Volkswagen. So if you can reduce the objectives, maybe you can negotiate some things that the client might reduce or be flexible to change. Maybe the precision is not important. Really, sometimes it's not important, the precision. And you can find a place, a sweet spot when the things that are feasible and the things that they can pay. And also talking about this perfect client, of course, it is a client which knows the survey objective clearly, the population of interest clearly, and they know if they are going to use models in the gathered data, or maybe they just want the estimate, and they don't mind about the variance, and they are flexible to change the bounds of the objective. So, and this brings me again to the importance of this survey seller role. It's the communication with the objectives and the costs.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna follow this adaptive table now that Asaph was suggesting. So, basically, is there any of you that have a question that would like to be, that things will be nice to have it answered by the table? If you don't, I do. Okay, you have one.
Well, I think that Andy answered or mentioned some points before. I would like to what do you think about the currently structures in have separate survey designers, have another of management service? To embrace this kind of ecology, we need new process. For example, in my case, I have a lot of paradata that we don't
Okay. So we can talk. We can have some communication here. So you can use that microphone. Perhaps I can interject first, and then Andy, the other Andy here. You feel? I think this is a question also that we've been struggling. Institutions like a Census Bureau. I think many other government agencies, statistical agencies in the United States, maybe similar sort of. I think the framework. we also have, many of those, I think the shops within the Census Bureau, compartmentalized. So, we have data, the field, data collection directorate. We have research and methodology directorate. And the directorate that I belong to, it is called Decennial Directorate. It has a lot of, I think the production work. But one change that we've been recently making in the past few years, so the structure that we've been having, sort of this traditional hierarchical, structure, the compartmentalized, and there are a lot of this silo effect, one structure and then one directorate does not necessarily speak to the other directorate. So we have this communication gap, and they don't talk to each other. So part of my function has been actually to make that happen. How can I help those folks working with adaptive design in economic directorate, talk with those people working with the same, I think the concept in Decennial Directorate, so they can learn from each other. One good example, I think I didn't delve into these details in my talk, but when it comes to the actual implementation after the testing, the adaptive design, actually Decennial Directorate I belong to, we failed in 3 years of pre-testing in preparation for the 2020 census. So we decided not to implement adaptive design for 2020 census, despite almost 3 years of hard work. This is not small work. It cost many millions of dollars and many the staff at the time. But in contrast, in the Econ Directorate, they actually made it happen. It worked. And so they have been already implementing that adaptive design as part of 2018, the Econ Census data collection. So I'm so happy, and then I had a chance to speak with the associate directors of those two directorates. They were aware of it, but when it comes to the staff or the production staff or the research staff in those two directorates, they didn't know what is happening. This is a very serious silo that I have observed. So actually in the paper that I'm working and I've been writing about this adaptive design and many of the innovations, I actually wrote about it. And then what is the issue and then how we can learn from each other. And actually you can find some of those papers in this, the JOS. Although they don't talk about it, but in this paper, and then also there's a 2018, where we have also two examples from the Census Bureau. They talk about how I think this adaptive design was not successful with Decennial Directorate, but it was actually successful with the Econ Directorate. So my response to you here is that it is very important to make some kind of point person or a few people who can make this communication really happening among different I think the key parts of I think INEGI. And that is one thing. And the other thing, perhaps I'm going to stop after this the second sort of comment is that I think it is very important also to bring in some third party outside of the institution. In the case of Census Bureau, we actually have a very good, I think, the working relationship with academia and also industry. So from time to time, we actually work with National Science Foundation, and we give them money, and then we have them actually, I think, have some kind of open competition among the academic institutions and industry, so they can actually, come up with really very good concept, very good research plans, and proposals that can actually be very helpful, not only to the Census Bureau, but also to other government agencies. So I had actually, the privilege of providing oversight to, this, I think about $25 million of NSF grant that has been shared among many academic institutions. The good thing here about this kind of collaboration with academia is that actually you can bring in the new blood, not necessarily actual staff, to work with us, but we can actually learn a lot from their practice, their ideas for 2030 census, 2040 census, the better ways of collecting American Community Survey, the better ways of measuring and then improving the adaptive design, and a lot of other issues that we talked about. So I think that kind of collaboration creation is very, very critical. Perhaps the INEGI can engage the academic institutions in Mexico, or sometimes you can just cross the border. There are some other institutions like RTI and then others, and then if you like, and if you have that kind of I think leverage that you can exercise, I think that may be very important and very useful link that can I think you can use. And then in response to your question, I don't know, Andy.
I completely agree, right? I mean, the old model, as you had, they're responsible for different roles on the project. So that has been addressed, I think, by different organizations in somewhat different ways. So one of the former U.S. Census Bureau directors created a group that would be the Center for Adaptive Design, and strategically involved this group in different projects, right? Different studies. So that's one way where you can concentrate your expertise, the people that can design these studies and evaluate them. They can also learn from multiple studies as well. If you have a smaller organization, it can work in different ways. Even RTI is big enough that we have separate groups for statisticians, and the group I'm in is survey methodology. So I didn't actually have even control over sampling and weighting until a statistician happened to make a mistake over that role. And then I could do more. And I think that has evolved. That was quite a while ago. I think that has evolved to the point where as long as you have somebody with both understanding of survey methods, but also an understanding of statistics would be, and having that person be one person, then you start being able to implement these design projects. And possibly another way, we've only had a couple of we have several studies where we've been successful at creating a responsive design or an adaptive design task within the study. And that way you also have some financial ability to say, we have hours dedicated to these designs. Ultimately, not all of them are cost neutral. Some of them would cost resources, but it depends also on the study. So one study that we worked on, I set up a propensity model that would determine when do you want to stop cases. We call millions of telephone numbers. So the cost associated with dialing numbers that really are not associated with the real household is tremendous. And so you can fit and estimate the propensity that a case is almost impossible to become an interview, highly unlikely. Well, stop that case, have the interviewers work. That's an example of one that has cost. And then on others, we're more interested about bias. And so OD, like the example that I gave with HSLS, that's studies that are really interested in reducing numbers. But you gain the ability to do that when you have a study where you actually have personnel with dedicated hours to be working on this. It really helps. So the top-down approach here works as well.
I'm hearing Andy Paychev here. I think the another couple of another good practices is that I think the other Andy could consider, and then INEGI consider is that actually, this is also one of the suggestions that we have made as part of this JAS special issue on adaptive design, the RAD. I think the Andy and also the Carlos, and perhaps the even the person sitting next to Carlos, I encourage and challenge you to write a paper together on the issue that you three think this is a sort of overlapping issue among all three of you. As a survey manager, researcher, and then someone who can actually contribute from the industry. I think and then submit that paper to JAS. Yeah. And I can take a look. And if you like to run it by me first, and I'm one of the associate editors, just like Paul Beamer, and Paul has been the associate editor for many years. The reason I'm suggesting this is not for I think doing some kind of propaganda for the JAS. the way I think the institutions like INEGI and then grow, and then the way that the survey managers and then researchers can talk to each other and then create some kind of collaboration is that, make something, some real, I think the word, the problem solved by the people working together from different sectors. And this is a sort of interdisciplinary practice perhaps the Eduardo has been practicing for many years. And that is also, I think, I'm a fan of interdisciplinary practice, interdisciplinary innovation. I think you three can make it happen. And then once that kind of paper is out there, and then for review, and then for the actual publication. And I like to see that kind of thing happen again and again by the INEGI people and then other people working together. And then see how much we can also learn from your best practice, and then also you can gain some good comments from other people based on these problems that you initiated and then you solved, and then you may have some other issues that you need to also look after, and then that there may be some other this larger community who can respond to the issues that you are struggling, and then that's how I think we can grow and we can learn from each other.
Great, thank you. So basically, I mean, this is sort of a great approach, working together, but we still need probably a long way to go in our institutions to actually get that happen. We have a very traditional institutions. We have very hierarchical institutions, and so working together between the different departments, as you mentioned, even in your own institutions that are probably more used to flexibility and collaboration, took a time to make it happen. So basically, you ask this side of the table to write a paper about how all these things can work together. But I will ask you back again if you can mention like the 3 basic steps that you will recommend to our institutions to start making this happen. I mean, you already mentioned like this collaboration and writing a paper, but I'm sure it will take them a year to write a paper and 1 or 2 years for the journal to referee the article and then publish it. So it's gonna take a while, and we would like to start getting some hands on this topic next week. So I will get back to you and ask you, I mean, for the first 3 easy, or not easy, but three basic recommendations that you'll help us to actually break this hierarchical organization and start getting this culture around our institutions.
I said it a few times, and I'll say it again. I think training and education is number 1, by far. So even if you just say, let's take the Groves and Heringer article, assign it. I mean, even have it translated and just assign it for everybody to read. I think it's not because you want exactly everybody replicating the same thing. It's a framework article with examples. It'll get people thinking in a different way about data collection, about embedding experiments within the main data collection, not a standalone experiment where you throw the data away. So I think that kind of mindset, you can probably start with just having people, 1, read some articles, and 2, you could have internal trainings. I honestly think that that is another way of getting, you can get senior data collection managers buy into this. So the next time that they're designing the survey, they'll tap somebody with the relevant skills because they understand what it can gain them, rather than just a concept like a title. And then the other things, once you start having these designs, then number 2 and 3 would be, well, develop some systems that would then allow you to monitor whether you're improving things. And develop a program for some basic research. So that could also happen on day 1. Maybe the shortest advice is one that I took from James Wagner as well. Start small. Some of the problems that we've had is when you think about developing this grandiose big system that you're going to monitor everything in the world, then it gets bogged down. And I've been part of a couple of these efforts where, yes, if you think too big, but if you start small and you say, from this small survey, let's test a couple of smaller things, then it becomes manageable and you grow it from there.
Perhaps the I think the Andy here mentioned a couple of very good suggestions, and perhaps I think I can offer a couple of comments to fill in. Perhaps from more sort of the senior the management perspective. I think the one thing that I found quite useful, not only at the Census Bureau, but also in other institutions that I worked at, NORC at the University of Chicago, and American Institute for Research, and also Bureau of Labor Statistics. My career, goes back to early 1990, after my training at the University of Michigan. So I had the opportunity to work or as part of the senior management or the senior leadership. And so one thing that I'm always trying to observe here is that every institution I work for, the first question I have here is that, do you have strategic plan that you have in place that the institutional leaders have agreed to, work together and then implement for the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years? And who are the planners and who are the implementers? And how do you monitor all those strategic plans step by step, and including strategies that you like to accomplish, and actual goals that you like to go after? And then who are the point persons that you make accountable and then responsible? And I wonder if INEGI, I think INEGI must have some kind of strategic plan, but it is more about actual implementation rather than just planning. And also whether the senior executive leaders of the INEGI have sort of this 3 to 5 strategic plan, and then along with very short-term plan for the next the 6 months to 12 months. In light of those long-term goals and then strategic, the goals that you wish to achieve. And I think this has been really well practiced in one of the directorates at the Census Bureau. Not all directorates are actually trying to implement this kind of strategic plan in their own directorates. But one directorate that I'm pretty familiar with is that Demographic Directorate of the Census Bureau has been very, very, good at institutionalizing and implementing strategic plan they came up with for their own the directorate. And then that impressed many other directorate the leaders, and they actually tried to model it. So that's something that I suggest. And second is that I think this is actually one observation that I have within the Census Bureau. We created this the Research and Development Research and Methodology Directorate, I would say about 5 or 6 years ago, when Bob Groves, I think he took his leadership as a census director, and this is important change because I think that he wanted to make the Census Bureau to make decisions informed by this research and then development, rather than by some ideas popping up here and there. So once we institutionalize that Research and Methodology Directorate, we've got a lot of this research-informed or the evidence-based sort of ideas that we should really seriously consider for implementation, whether this is for the econ census, demographic, the directorate programs, or the Decennial Directorate programs, or the other programs for the field data collection process. So I think that kind of perhaps the initiative may be very important. I don't know how the INEGI has been structured in terms of the roles between the research and then development based the staff and then other people. And the last, I think, suggestion I have, based on these three, I think that you asked about, is that this is something along with this suggestion that Andy Paychev made. I think it is very important. I think he mentioned about work with small the very few cases. I would say perhaps a little bit more. What are the most perhaps the important projects or some kind of demonstration cases that you can come up with? Something not small but something very important and then critical to the INEGI. And if you do some real good demonstration, just one or two, what are those? Whether this is for the household-based the survey or econ, the survey, and then grab, and then have some kind of agreement. Okay, we are gonna, go with perhaps the couple of demonstration cases that we like to work with, and then do some, some of those actual implementation based on all those problems and issues and solutions that you are thinking about, and it's gonna take some time. So perhaps that demonstration cases with a few critical perhaps the projects that you can come up with, that may be very useful. Speaking of the this Center for Adaptive Design that Andy Paychev mentioned, now I like to be very transparent and very honest. And I told you I'm here as a private citizen, so I may be perhaps the saying more than I'm able to. Center for Adaptive Design, that was a very good, actually the center. This is kind of center that I think the last panelist here mentioned. But actually over years, we lost actually many good human resources who initially dedicated to the Center for Adaptive Design within the Census Bureau. So although we had started with very good sort of system, and then good human resources, sometimes if you have the leader who changed, who does not understand why this is important change to make, and then why this has to be carried out, regardless of who's going to take the leadership. And I think it is going to be at a juncture that perhaps you did not expect in initially. So I'm really trying to revitalize that center along with some of the senior leaders, but it's not going to happen overnight. So you got to be prepared for some of those risks, some of those perhaps the negative, I think the impacts that you didn't think about initially, according to this strategic plan that I think you started off. So think about the risks in advance and how you're going to work with those risks, and then come up with some potential solutions in the middle of implementation.
Okay. Well, that will be the end of this table. Thank you very much for all participants. Thank you very much for all of you, and we'll get to the second table.